Chip stocks like NVDA, AMD, and MU have had big runs, especially over the past couple of weeks, and they're now starting to pull back a little bit. If you feel like you've missed out on these moves or you couldn't quite get the timing right for them, this video is going to help you because we're going to talk about the RSW strategy that allows you to buy stocks just like this before they have an explosive move. RSW stands for relative strength or relative weakness, and we can find this by comparing two different stocks or two different assets to find which of them is strong and which of them is weak. This is going to allow you to invest in the strong stocks that are not only going to be less susceptible to bigger sell-offs along with the general market, but they're also going to be the first ones to have a big explosive move when the market is strong. So, for example, if we compare stocks like NVIDIA, AMD, MU, and AVGO, because these all fall within the chip sector of the market, we can find which of these are better performing on any given day and which of them are a little bit weaker. Taking a look, for example, at NVIDIA and AMD, 2 days ago we saw that NVIDIA had a gap up in a big intraday run to new all-time highs, whereas AMD was trading below its previous highs and completely within the range of its previous day's candlestick. So on that day we could easily see that there was some relative strength in NVIDIA when compared to AMD. The same is true for AVGO when compared to Micron. Okay, so that is the first step in determining some relative strength in finding these strong stocks to invest in, especially here within the chip sector. We can just take a quick glance, honestly, at the daily chart and see how they're performing relative to each other. The next step is to take it a step further and to see how these stocks then are comparing to the general market. So in order to do that, here in Thinkorswim, I'm going to go to Studies, Edit Studies, and I'm going to add the comparison study here onto the chart. This is going to allow us to compare the chart of any stock that we want to analyze to a baseline. And the baseline that we're going to use is going to be the SPX for the S&P 500. This is going to kind of show us, again, how the stock is performing relative to the general market or our baseline. So we're now not only finding stocks with relative strength within the chip sector, within all of these chip stocks, but we can also see then how these stocks are performing relative to the general market. And currently what we're seeing with NVIDIA when compared to the S&P 500 is, I would say that there was initially a little bit of relative weakness in NVIDIA this morning at the market open. We get this sell-off, whereas the market actually has a little bit of a spike at the market open. It actually turns the VWAP area here, this red line going through the chart, into a little bit of resistance, and then it has another leg down as the market pulls back. So for me, seeing this relative weakness, I would not necessarily have a long bias on NVIDIA today, given this current price action. But we could just go through some of these stocks. Micron, for example, next, pretty much moving just like we see NVIDIA doing. Actually, a little bit more relative weakness here in Micron compared to NVIDIA. Ready to break down at the lows here, it looks like, while the market is actually starting to potentially form a bit of a double bottom here and start to bounce back up a bit. If we compare AVGO is another one here within the sector. We could see AVGO has a little bit of relative strength, especially compared to NVIDIA and Micron, and that's because we don't see nearly as steep of a sell-off at the market open. We see this actually kind of consolidating a bit here, even as the market started to have this sell-off at about 10:30 this morning. So if I were to have a long bias looking to catch an intraday run up to the highs on any of these three stocks that we just looked at, my choice for today would be AVGO, just given the relative strength that we're seeing when compared to the general market. Now, where the magic really happens with this type of strategy, especially for swing trading and longer term trading, is when we actually take a look at the daily chart and we compare the daily chart to our baseline, the S&P 500. And I know this chart looks a little bit chaotic here with all of these moving averages and then our comparison line. We have the 10, the 20, the 50, and the 200-day exponential moving averages. And then this white line is going to be our comparison or our baseline to the S&P 500. And what we want to see when we're looking for relative strength to get into a potential swing trade, this worked really well with these chip stocks, especially with MU over the past couple of months. And we want to see that the market, or this white line through our chart, is pulling back and having a little bit of a sell-off, whereas the stock that we're analyzing, in this case AVGO, is consolidating and holding up pretty well, especially over some of these key moving averages. And for me, the 20 and the 50-day moving averages tend to be kind of the sweet spot, especially when the general market is starting to pull back a bit. These often act as areas of support, And if they're able to hold on to these support areas while the general market is selling off, that's a great sign of relative strength. And again, that means that this stock is not only going to be less susceptible to selling off with the market, but it's also most likely going to be one of the first to rip back to new highs when the market does start to bounce and start to recover from the pullback. So that's a little look into how I personally use relative strength in the market to find stocks before they have an explosive move to the upside. We use this for day trading and even for swing trading. And we have a full section in the Day Trade Bootcamp at Master the Market dedicated to the RSW strategy and finding and trading relative strength and relative weakness. We also have an entire channel in the Market Master group dedicated to RSW alerts. So if you want to learn more about this strategy and also follow along with our trade alerts, all of that is included to our members at Master the Market. There's going to be a link down below in the description for you to get signed up. I hope you found some value in this video, and if you did, please make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and good luck with your trading.